Some bonds between people and their cats defy explanation. In the quiet town of Windsor, Ontario, an extraordinary story was about to unfold, one that would touch every soul who heard it. It was a tale of connection, of love that outlasts time, and bridges the divide between species. On a calm afternoon in Windsor, Sophie Lane's life was about to take a turn she never expected. A longtime librarian at the Windsor Public Library, Sophie had built a quiet, content life in the heart of her community. She appreciated the rhythm of the seasons, the serene trails by the Detroit River, and the cozy cafes scattered across downtown. Jackson Park was her favorite spot. She strolled among blooming tulips each spring and admired the crisp leaves falling in autumn. Yet nothing in her life compared to the companionship of her cat, Julio. Their story began 12 years earlier, on a golden spring morning, filled with floral scents and birdsong. Sophie had accompanied her best friend Laura to the Windsor Essex County Humane Society, more out of curiosity than intent. She wasn't planning to adopt that day, but fate had a different plan. In a quiet corner of the shelter, curled in a basket, like a secret waiting to be found, was a small tabby kitten with shining amber eyes and a curious spark. Their gazes locked. In that instant, something changed inside Sophie. She reached out, and the kitten leaped into her arms, purring with such force that the staff laughed softly. That warm, rumbling body against her chest was a moment burned into her heart. She knew they were meant to be together. She named him Julio, inspired by a clever old explorer from her favorite childhood story, The Journeys of Julio. From that day on, Julio was her truest companion. Each evening he waited by the window, eyes fixed on the driveway. He greeted her at the door with chirps and soft circles around her feet. At night, he curled beside her on the pillow, purring while she read under the mellow glow of her reading lamp. Weekends were their time. Slow, peaceful mornings snuggled on the couch while rain tapped at the glass. Sophie gave Julio everything: the best food, gleaming fur from regular brushing, and timely vet visits. Following shelter advice, she also had a microchip placed under his skin, a small act of foresight she'd one day be grateful for. Still, no precaution could prepare her for what lay ahead. One crisp October afternoon, when Julio was about 5, Sophie was tending her backyard garden. The leaves were a patchwork of gold and orange, and wood smoke drifted from nearby homes. She left the screen door ajar just briefly. When she turned back, Julio was gone. At first she wasn't alarmed. He often roamed the yard and always returned. But as the minutes passed and the sun dipped low, worry grew into dread. She called his name with increasing panic, her voice trembling in the cool air. She searched every alley, knocked on doors, hung posters, and contacted every local shelter. She kept his microchip details updated, just in case. But days turned into weeks and there was no sign of him. Still, Sophie didn't stop. Every night she left a dish of food outside. Every morning she checked online listings and shelters. The untouched bowl each dawn broke her heart anew. That Christmas was unbearable. She hung a tiny silver bell with Julio's name on the tree and cried herself to sleep beneath its soft lights. Friends gently suggested she adopt again, but Sophie couldn't. Julio wasn't replaceable. Time moved on. The ache dulled but never disappeared. Sophie eventually moved to a house closer to downtown, though she kept her old phone line. A quiet hope still lingered, that one day somehow Julio might return. On rainy nights, she'd dream of him at the doorstep, soaked but alive, and wake with tears on her cheeks. Then, 7 years later, on a gray March morning, the phone rang. A voice from the Windsor Essex County Humane Society explained that an old, battered tabby had been found near an abandoned lot, malnourished and frail, but when scanned, his microchip lit up. Julio, registered to Sophie Lane, still tied to her number. Sophie froze. Her heart raced. Could it truly be, after all this time? She grabbed her coat without a second thought and rushed into the drizzling rain. Her thoughts swirled with memories of Julio, the kitten, the cuddler, the friend. At the shelter, they led her to a small private room. Inside a cage lay a thin, curled figure, barely more than a whisper of the cat she remembered. Before we continue, we'd appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed to the channel. It truly helps us out. Thank you. His fur was unkempt, one ear torn, and his left eye cloudy with infection. He looked worn down by life, but as Sophie softly whispered, "Julio, Zerenia," his head lifted. He sniffed the air, one eye narrowing in recognition. He knew that scent. It cut through the years. A faint purr began to rise from his chest, unsteady but real. Sophie dropped to her knees, weeping. She reached into the cage. Julio, swaying with effort, pressed his fragile body against her hand, making a sound that was half meow, half memory. The shelter staff stood silently nearby, tears in their own eyes. Sophie gently cradled him in her arms. He nestled into her, breathing her in, making sure this moment was no dream. For a long time they stayed like that, suspended in a hush no words could touch. The vet spoke carefully. Julio was very ill, severely underweight, infected. With dental problems and possible surgery ahead, his time might be short. Sophie didn't blink. "Whatever he needs," she said. Her hands shook as she signed the adoption papers once more. Julio was coming home. At her house, she had already set up a special space, a warm bed, heating pad, and even the old toys she'd saved. She laid him down gently, and he curled into a sigh that seemed to release 7 years of searching. The first days were hard. Julio ate very little. Sophie fed him from a syringe, coaxing him with high-nutrient meals. She gave medicine, cleaned his eye, and read aloud to him as she had when he was young. Her voice was still his comfort, now a lullaby for fragile nights and uncertain dawns. Little by little, Julio began to show signs of recovery. His once scruffy fur started to soften, and his fragile frame filled out ever so slightly. He began to respond to Sophie's gentle voice with quiet chirps and faint rhythmic purrs. One quiet afternoon, she retrieved a crinkly toy ball from a box of old belongings, one she had kept through the years. When she shook it, Julio's ears gave a faint twitch. With visible effort, he reached out a paw and tapped it once. It was small, but it felt like watching a part of him return from somewhere far away. Still, the past had left its mark. Sudden, sound sent him scrambling under the couch. Quick movements startled him easily. Sophie adapted, learning to move slowly, speak softly, and wait patiently. She installed small night lights to soften the darkness, hoping to calm the shadows that made him uneasy. In those early days, Julio barely let her out of his sight. While she cooked, he lay curled at her feet like a quiet guardian. As she read, he nestled close against her, his frail body resting on her lap. Even at night, he stirred from sleep just to be sure she was near, often reaching a paw toward her hand or shirt, seeking comfort through touch. His need for her was intense and wordless, and Sophie met it with unwavering tenderness. But just when things seemed stable, something unexpected shattered the fragile calm. One quiet afternoon in the kitchen, Julio cried out sharply and collapsed. His body convulsed, foam forming at the edge of his mouth. "Julio!" Sophie cried, rushing to his side. Panic gripped her. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone, misdialing twice before connecting to the emergency clinic. "Windsor Emergency Pet Care. How can I help you?" "My cat. He's collapsed. He's shaking, and I don't know what to do." Sophie's voice cracked with desperation. "Bring him in right away," the receptionist instructed. "Dr. Werner is on duty." Wrapping Julio gently in his blanket, Sophie ran to the car. "Stay with me, Julio. Please, don't go again." At the clinic, Dr. Werner met her at the door. "Tell me everything," he said calmly, taking Julio into his arms. He cried out and just fell. "It happened so fast," Sophie explained. "I only found him a few weeks ago, after 7 years. Hours later, Dr. Werner returned with x-rays in hand. "Miss Lane," he said gently, "we've found something troubling." He pointed to a small, dense object on the image. "There's a metal fragment embedded in his abdomen." Sophie's breath caught. "Metal? Inside him?" "It's likely from an old injury," he explained. His body built scar tissue around it, but it's shifted. It's now pressing on nerves and possibly vital organs. Can it be removed? She asked, voice low. Yes, Dr. Werner replied. But it's risky. Julio's age and condition make surgery dangerous. What happens if we do nothing? If the fragment moves again, it could rupture his stomach or affect blood vessels. He may not survive another seizure. Sophie didn't hesitate. Then we have to try. He didn't come all this way to give up now. Before surgery, Sophie was allowed to visit Julio. He lay in a small oxygen chamber, hooked to monitors, his body still. Hey, sweet boy, she whispered, kneeling beside him. You're going to be okay, I promise. Dr. Patel, a surgical specialist, stepped in. It's near vital organs, she said. We'll proceed carefully, but I won't lie, it's delicate work. Just do everything you can, Sophie said, clutching the blanket tighter. The waiting room was silent except for the ticking of a clock. Sophie sat hunched over, holding Julio's blanket to her face. A nurse named Marcus gave brief updates. He's stable, we're progressing slowly. There were some complications, but we've adjusted. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Patel returned, her face tired but composed. It was more complex than we expected, she said. In her hand was a small sealed container, with a jagged piece of metal. Part of a car bumper, it looks like, lodged deep, but it's out now. Sophie stared at the fragment that had caused years of silent pain. And he made it? He did, Dr. Patel said. He's resting now. You can see him briefly. In recovery, Julio was bundled on a heated pad, his belly shaved, a neat row of stitches visible. His breathing was steady. The next 24 hours are crucial, Dr. Patel said, but I'm hopeful. He's stronger than we thought. In the days that followed, Julio began to truly mend. His steps grew more certain. His purr, once faint, grew fuller. It was as if the removal of that hidden burden had lifted more than just physical pain. He seemed freer, lighter, more at peace. Life found a new rhythm. Sophie reconnected with old friends, began to smile more at work, and even spent quiet afternoons with Evan, a kind man who volunteered at the shelter. They'd sip tea on the porch while Julio napped nearby, the sun warming his back. Julio, now grizzled and wise, greeted Sophie each night with a soft meow. He still curled beside her while she read, placing a paw gently on her chest, feeling her heartbeat. He trusted her fully again, one small gesture at a time. Every night before sleep, Sophie whispered the same words to him. You're safe now. You're home, and I'll never leave you again. Julio's future was uncertain. He was old, his body fragile, but the love they shared had survived the worst of time and loss. It had deepened, not dimmed. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever reunited with a beloved pet after being apart? Share your experience in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Love doesn't forget, and sometimes it finds its way home. Thanks for watching, and take care. See you next time.